In a recent video, I shared with you my thoughts around being a resilient leader and the cost that can happen sometimes, the cost you may need to pay by being overly resilient for an excessive amount of time because you're carrying everything on your own back for so long. And one of the ways that I suggested to work through this is to allow yourself to be vulnerable with your team. Allow yourself to share what's going on and see, maybe be surprised by the help and support that someone would have to offer you. And thinking back on the video, I thought that just the theme of vulnerability would be something nice to explore together. So this video, I'm going to share my thoughts about that topic and we'll go from there. So often when we talk about vulnerability, what I find is that there's a couple of extremes that people see, or people will see it more at a certain extreme. It's as if we're trying to take emotions away from business to a certain extent. You know, we're not allowed to cry in front of our teams. We're not allowed to be overly emotional around our teams. But vulnerability doesn't need to mean getting naked in front of your team all the time, completely naked in front of your team. Vulnerability can be much simpler than that. And the way I like to think about it is I like to think about it in the way that Patrick Lencioni talks about vulnerability-based trust when he talks in his book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And if, as a leader, we're just able to create a space where people can say, I don't know, where people can say, I need help, where people can say, I'm sorry, where people can say, this was my fault, without fear of judgment from their teams, vulnerability can be as simple and as basic as that. And you'd be surprised, like I've worked with many corporate management teams over the years, and I find that there's always a little bit of ego that gets mixed into that, and we just aren't always comfortable going to those places, even if those places, you know, saying I'm sorry, saying I need help, saying it's my mistake, even if those things can seem very basic. The thing is, you know, it's how you show up as a leader. It's how you help create that inside your team that's going to make a difference. So if someone is vulnerable in your team, shares something in front of everyone, and there's judgment that happens, it's kind of your responsibility to step up and say, hey, wait a sec here. You know, Steffan is making an effort to share this in front of us. This is surely not easy, and we want more of this, not less. This is the example we want to follow. You need to create that with your words. And sometimes what you need to do is you need to be the one that initiates it. You need to be the one that shows up in that way, that says those things. Now I know, you know, some people may be watching this video and saying, yeah, but you know, if I do something wrong with someone in a meeting, I'll go talk to that person after and I'll apologize in front of that person after. Great, you're doing amazing, that is super. But now think of the impact of doing that in front of your whole team. Think of what the message that you're giving your team. Think of the example that you're giving your team when you do something like that. When you're able to catch yourself in a moment. So for example, a very basic example from a business world, as a leader, you're with your management team or you're with your team in general, larger team, and you know, you shut someone down in a meeting. If you see it and you're able to turn around in the moment and say, oh, wait a sec, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have gone there, I shouldn't have acted that way, I'd like to hear you out. Can you please continue? I'm sorry, I'm going to listen, I'm not going to do that again. It sets a powerful example. And the first few times that you do it, people may go, oh my God, what is this? This is weird. But after a few times, people will get used to it. You're setting the bar at a certain level. And that's what happens with vulnerability. You need to set the bar where it needs to be with your team. So it starts with very easy things. It starts just by, you know, apologizing if you mess up. It starts with you saying that you need help. All these things, it starts with you. And it may be uncomfortable in the moment, and I get it. But I just want to share with you, vulnerability doesn't mean that you need to be completely naked. And I had some conversations after my first video where people were saying, Steph, vulnerability is kind of overused and it's a buzzword right now. But maybe we should use another word, Steph. Maybe you should come up with something else when you talk about it in your videos. And I like the term vulnerability. Not as much because I attach it to weakness, but I attach it in my head. For me, vulnerability is I am doing something that is uncomfortable, potentially, for me right now. It doesn't need to be uncomfortable all the time, but right now, this can be uncomfortable for me. I'm taking a risk. And then when you see someone else on your team do that, you can respect that, you can honor that, and you can protect the person and you can support the person. Now, I'm not saying that in the business world we need to accept when we have bad employees that make mistakes all the time, and it should always be okay to make mistakes. I'm not going that far, okay? But all I'm saying is it's the culture that we cultivate inside our team. If we're looking for the blame game, what's going to happen is we're going to play the blame game continuously. And then as we're playing the blame game, we're not doing anything constructive and we're not solving our business problems. So can we move beyond that and just say, yes, thanks for saying that, you made that mistake. Let's just move on now. But how do we fix it? That's the important thing right now. So hopefully this little take on vulnerability is going to help you see maybe something different that you weren't thinking about before. And thanks for your time. I appreciate it.